Hello! Today we are going to be making this gorgeous little Christmas mouse, which could be made in any kind of sizes to make a whole family of Christmas mice if that's what you like. We're being watched by another little Margot mouse over here that I made at a 10-minute home course. This one's a little bit simpler. So we're going to need some fabric for this, and if you want it to look Christmassy then you are definitely going to have to use some Christmas type of material here, fabric, and we are going to need some felt for the ears and the bottom, some kind of ribbon for the tail, and I'll go through something for his eyes in a little while. So what you need is a shape that looks like this. Now for this sized mouse, and if I show you next to my scissors you can see what size it is. For this kind of sized mouse, the side is about 15 centimetres. And that angle is approximately 45 degrees. But you may have to experiment a little bit in making sure that when you fold yours around, it's going to create a... The reason I'm laughing is because we are having a little cat coming in on the side to play with the mice. I'm hoping that she's going to keep off there, keep off and not chase my mice, even if it's mice. She's lying down now. You may have to just adjust how it is to see that your mouse isn't too wide and fat or too tall and thin when you do that. But that's approximately what we want, a sort of pizza slice shape. And when you've got one like that, you then need to cut it out of your fabric so that you have that like that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for his body. For the bottom, you're going to need a circle, and you may need to wait and see what size that's going to be. For the ears, I drew around the glue stick. So I drew around the lid of a glue stick to create the ear shape. And if you want to embellish him, you're going to need a few more bits of felt as well. But that's basically what we need. So some pieces of felt, some fabric, and obviously a needle and thread. So we're going to take our fabric like this and fold it in half. And then sew up the side. Now I'm just going to show you it on the paper. Help! My mice are terrified because they're being eaten by a cat. Just excuse me for a moment while I perhaps make my cat sit somewhere a little bit more suitable while we have a look about where we're going to sew. So we're going to sew down this edge. If you're good at backstitch, you need to start at the top and sew down. If you're not good at backstitch, you need to look back because there is a video on how to do backstitch. And we want to end up at the bottom. If you're a total beginner sewer, you can sew up with a running stitch, which is what I'm showing on the felt tip pen there, and then back down again, filling in, so that you end up at the bottom, like that. I'll show you on my piece of fabric that's done here. Now you do not need to worry about this being perfect. Okay, we're about ½ centimetre in along there, and we're having a line down there. Obviously you could do that on your sewing machine as well. If you have a sewing machine, nip down there perfectly well. When you get to the bottom, leave a long thread on. Okay, leave your long thread, don't cut that off. And then you need to turn it out. So put your fingers inside and turn it out. Now when you're turning something out, you always have to be careful. Don't be tempted to pick up your scissors even though they're just sitting there, because you can poke all the way through. You're much better using something that's blunter. I nearly used the sharp end there. Something that's blunter to push through. A chopstick is a fantastic thing to use for turning out, but a pencil or even your finger will also work. Now when you get to his nose, it's up to you how pointy you want your nose to be. If you want a super pointy nose, just keep pushing until it comes out really, really pointy. If you want him to have a slightly curvier nose, then just don't push it all the way like that. But you will have it so that it is a little cone like that, the right way round, with a seam up there. Now if you want to iron it at this stage you can, but it isn't necessary. I've just realised I didn't tell you you needed toy stuffing, and you absolutely need toy stuffing. Like last week, you can get the inside of a pillow out. You could also stuff them with either sand or rice or lentils, or apparently even cat litter. Any of those things can be. Now, remembering that you left your long thread there, you're now going to sew all the way around the bottom. I'm going to just hold that forward for you to see. So a running stitch now all the way around from the seam where you're starting all the way around. And when you get to the back, you need to pull. And when you pull it, it will gather it all together like this one at the bottom. And it will be completely gathered by pulling. You then over sew a couple of times just to make sure it's really secure and cut your thread. And you will end up with a bottom that looks like that. It might look really untidy, more untidy than that one. Now, if you are making this for your cat to play with, your cat is not going to care about whether or not it looks untidy on the bottom. That's fine. But if you're making this as a Christmas decoration, you want it to look a little bit smarter. So now you're going to put this down on your felt and draw around it, or find something similar in your craft stash that might be about the same size. I've got a cotton reel here, and that makes more or less exactly the right size. So I'm going to put that down and draw around it and cut out a piece of felt for the bottom. When we've done that, we're going to sew around the edge. Now, I have used a dark thread here so that you can see it, but you want to use a thread that would match. I also have used white felt on the bottom of a red mouse, but that's only for demonstration purposes. You're much better using the same colour like that one, so that it blends in. So red on red would work well. This one did a contrast because there is some white of the mistletoe. It's up to you what you've got around. And then we're just going to sew around the bottom there. You can see that. Now at this point you can tuck your little tail in. Either sew it right to the bottom there, or you can just tuck it inside and catch it as you go around. We've got a variety of tails here. I've snipped a little bit of the material which is exactly the same with that one. I've snipped a little piece of felt for that one. This one has a thin ribbon. This one has some of this stuff called rickrack, which is really nice and really cheap. Any of those ones that you can use, anything, a piece of string, anything that you want, and just catch it in the sewing as you go around. Before you put your tail on, you need to decide whether you want your tail curling upwards or going downwards. Okay, up there or down here on the bottom, it's fine. Now, your mouse can either stand up like this one is doing. I'm going to hold that there so he does stand up, or it can sit down to run along the bottom like that. The seam needs to go up the back either way. So before you think about the next section, just making sure that the seam part that you could see down there goes along the back of your mouse, either while he's standing up or while he's sitting down. So just decide with that. So you've got to this stage now where you've got a nice neat bottom on. It's nice and firmly stuffed. I hope I told you to stuff. I don't think I did. Oh, before you do the sewing bit, just remember to put your stuffing in. You need to poke that in, make sure it goes all the way to the end of the nose. Use your finger or even something else to get it in there. It's up to you about how much you want to do with the stuffing, whether you want a really fat, sturdy mouse or whether you want your mouse to bend a little bit like that, where you want him. You mess about with that and decide how much you think. You often need a little bit more toy stuffing than you think you will. You often do when you get there. Now, this little mouse, he doesn't look like a mouse. What's he missing? He's missing some ears, and that's what's definitely going to make him look mousy. So with our felt ears, and felt is really good for this because it doesn't fray, and they're actually quite small by the time you've done this. So fabric is going to be a lot harder to deal with turning it inside out. This little mouse's ears are fabric and much more complicated, much more difficult to do. But when you've got it like that, you need to fold. So just give it a little pinch at the bottom there, and it makes it a lot more mousy. You then need to spend a bit of time thinking about where you want his ears. Do you want his ears to be right near the end? Probably not. Do you want your ears to be up like that? Or would you like your ears to be sideways like that? you decide where you want him to have his ears and then sew them in place. If you have got to a stage where you don't feel like sewing anymore, you could always get the glue gun out to add some of these extra little features on. But sew his ears in place either on the side or on the top or on the side, is what I mean. And just decide where to put his little ears like that. So now he's got some ears, he's going to need to have some eyes. There's all kinds of things that you can do with the eyes. This one has got sequins for the eyes, and you can sew those sequins through for those eyes. That's it. This one, however, is quite simply, and he's only got one ear because his ear was the demonstration one, but he has simply got felt tip pen. You can just get that out if your fabric is paler and you can see. And because I don't think that these are going to be washed very much, actual normal felt tip pen will do. I'd try it on a scrap to make sure that it doesn't bleed too much first, but that'll absolutely do, because you're not going to be washing it very much like that. If you're clever, you could manage to get the bit of your fabric. So if you had a fabric like this one that has some white dots on, and you cut it very carefully, fussy cutting they call it, you might be able to get a part of the fabric showing as the eyes. This one has tiny black buttons, and if you have the buttons like that, they could look really nice, definitely. This mouse, who doesn't have any eyes at the moment, oh no, this one, I'm going to give him some eyes. There, I'm going to put googly eyes. I have a giant pile of googly eyes here, and you can have some fun with whether or not you think he's going to have gigantic eyes, like the ones we used for the owl, or whether we want to have some smaller eyes. I have slightly less small eyes left over because I used them for the spiders. Do you remember those spiders a few weeks ago? Oh, they get ever so, oh, there's the one I want, ever so static. Those, when you're putting your fingers in, they're all sticking all over the place. And I'm going to use my glue gun. I'm going to get the glue gun out here because this is the only way you can stick googly eyes on really effectively. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue on the back there, and I did have my glue gun warming up for you because I knew I was going to do this. So we've got a little bit of glue there, and we're going to put it on. Remember, with the glue gun you don't really have a chance to move, so you need to think first of all where you want those eyes to be. You can also see that I've got stringy bits coming off the glue. I always manage to have stringy bits coming off the glue, and I just don't worry about that because you can always cut them off afterwards. I'm going to see where to put his other eye so that he looks as if they're in the right place. So you see these stringy bits here, if you can see them on the video, just pull them off after it's dried. Get them off your fingers. I'm not throwing them on the floor, I have a bin next to me. Okay, and there we have our mouse with his little googly eyes. Now if you look at this one particularly, you've got some whiskers. And the whiskers, quite simply, this one's got giant whiskers, so it's quite fun to see. He's like my other cat, Nick, who has really big whiskers. That's just sticking your needle all the way through, backwards and forwards, and then snipping off. It is true that if you were to pull, they would come off, but you're probably not going to pull it, are you? So they can sit there like that. If you're making this for a cat to play with, you could put catnip inside there and not bother with things like the eyes and the nose, because that's not the right kind of thing. If you are doing this for very young children and you want to avoid googly eyes because of the whole choking thing, then you can just do felt tip pen and nobody's going to choke on that at all. So you've got all of those different ways of making your mouse for standing up. Now, to add a bit of extra Christmassiness, these ones have got a bit of holly sitting on the front of them. A red button looks really nice, so do little pom-poms. The button is sewn on, but the pom-poms are glued on. And you can have, I usually just freehand a little bit of holly leaf felt, because really you're probably doing that quite a lot at this time of year, cutting out little things like that. So just freehand them, and then, oh, his tail's in the way, and then add that on and either glue gun them or sew them in place. And you could have a whole family of mice. We've got a daddy mouse, a mummy mouse, and a baby mouse here, all sitting, getting ready for Christmas Eve. They'll be fast asleep, of course, on Christmas Eve, being good. And I'll see you soon for some more craft fun.